Mummy. Why is that man hitting his steering wheel so hard?
Well, how fast are we going, darling?
We're going about 50 miles an hour, Mummy.
Oh, that's just shimmy, darling. Nothing to worry about. All BMWs have it from time to time. Don't worry.
Hello and welcome to Tim's BMW Repairs and Information. Shimmy. Such a little word, but causes such a lot of problems, especially to us owners of the big BMWs. In fact, it's more or less exclusive to the big BMWs, and I'll explain why a bit later. But what we're going to do now, I've got two cameras, one in the car, one at home pointing at the car, and we're going to go out for a drive. I'm going to show you that I've got shimmy. I'm going to drive home. I'm going to fix the problem in less than 10 minutes. And then we'll go out for another drive and hopefully the shimmy's gone. And when I get back, I'm going to explain exactly what causes shimmy and how to fix it. Right, let's get a move on. We're out the 30 limit. Let's speed up a bit, and straight away I can feel some imprecision in the steering. It's a horrible feeling, like you're not fully in control, and there goes the shake. Yeah, we got shimmy, just as I thought we would, and it's a horrible feeling. It's not as bad as my E32, but it's just horrible, and you can't control the car properly, can't let go of the steering wheel, it goes all over the place, and it's a horrible feeling, and you can feel it through the steering wheel, feel it through your hands, and you don't feel fully in control of the car. And it's only between 45 and 55 or so, and I used to whiz straight through that with my E32, so like this, up to 60 and it's gone, and then you slow down a bit, and then things start shaking again. Here we go, yeah, shaking away again, horrible feeling. It's not a great deal of shake, not as bad as the E32, but it's still horrible. You sort of speed up and slow down a bit around about 55 and 60. And it sort of comes and goes, and some days you get stuck behind cars and you can't whiz through 55 up to 60. But here comes the shimmy again, horrible, yeah, especially on corners. No, it's horrible. It's a horrible feeling altogether, ghastly. So let's get home and fix it. Right, there we go. Right, we've changed the tyre pressure from 30 to 41, and we'll see if that makes a difference to the shimmy. Right, off we go. Car feels nicer to drive to start with. There goes the ABS, or ASC plus T pump. Steering doesn't feel light, feels absolutely perfect. Up we go. Not a sausage, absolutely perfect. Nice feel. Straight through to 60, absolutely no problem, straight as a die. There we go, lovely. And it also feels like it's, I'm a bit more in control now. And that's changed from 30 to 40 psi more or less, or 30 to 41. And it's amazing the amount of difference that makes. And the reason it makes such a huge difference is the width of the tyres. The wider the tyre you have, the more problems you're going to have with dynamic imbalance. great fun to drive again. Nothing, look at that, 55, 60, absolutely straight as a die, no vibration, nothing. So yeah, Shimmy always starts with tyres. Alright, there we go. Right, let's have a look at why wheels and tyres can cause shimmy. Right, look at the very basics. You've got a wheel and your tyre fitter puts a tyre on it. He'll balance it on his machine and they say, well, the tyre's a bit heavier there, so I'll put a weight here. And that is called static imbalance. So if you hadn't put the weight there, then the wheel is unbalanced statically. And that means when it doesn't move, one bit weighs more than the other. And that will then cause forces in this direction, which will act on the axle. Now, these sort of imbalances don't cause shimmy. They'll cause wheel wobble, which is different. Wheel wobble is not felt through the steering wheel, it's felt through the whole car, so the whole car shakes. And that's obvious when you look at it because you get forces up and down and left and right and all places in between, and that has no effect on the steering. Okay, let's have a look at a tyre from the front rather from the side, and it's going to be a wide tyre as fitted to the big BMWs. Now if we got a bit which is a bit heavier than the other, then the tyre fit will put a weight there, and then we've got static imbalance, static balance, so you get no forces up and down or towards you and away from you. But if you've got a tyre which has got a bit more weight there and a bit more weight there, then the tyre fitter won't fit a weight because top half of the tyre weighs the same as the bottom half and exactly the same as this. It doesn't have any static imbalance. But what this is called is dynamic imbalance. And BMW has got a paper on this that discusses this as a cause of shimmy. And the reason for that is if we divide the tyre in half like this, then we find that this, if we had this just that as a tyre, then this half of the tyre weighs more than that half. And if we pretend that was a single tyre, then the top half weighs more than the bottom half. Now, what that does is imparts a left and right force, and it's the only imbalance which causes a left and right force. And the reason for that is because it's a pendulous mass. And we can think of it just as two pendulums. So we'll cut the tyre down to the axle point and these two imbalances. So we've got a lump here and we've got a lump here. And now what we'll find is that the forces work in this direction. The centrifugal forces want to force this part inwards and this part inwards. And of course the tyre will turn round half a turn and then the forces will swap over and it'll want to put a force in that direction and in that direction. And what that does is, if you can imagine as these swap over, is it's now imparting forces that go left and right in the wheel and tyre combination. And that's the only imbalance, which is called dynamic imbalance, that causes a left and right problem, whereas the static imbalance causes forwards, backwards, ups and down, but it doesn't cause left and right. So if we've got, let's have a couple of tyres on a car. There we go, a couple of tyres, hubs on them, and we'll put the steering mechanism, tie rods and all the rest of it. Let's go. And so we've now got a dynamic imbalance, and what that is doing is imparting forces left and right now rather than up and down and towards you and away from you, and that imparts forces into the steering mechanism. So let's stick the steering box on there and then we join that to the steering wheel. Now inside the steering box we have the torsion bar, and that takes up play. It's designed to, as you turn the steering wheel, the torsion bar turns slightly, twists, and that then commands the steering box to put forces that turns the steering left and right. Okay, so now first thing you're going to say is, well, Tim, for goodness sake, it's nothing to do with tyres. It's tie rods, or it's the upper arms and lower arms. So let's put the upper arms and lower arms in like that. Yes, I mean, that's a point, because of course you can get rid of shimmy sometimes by replacing all sorts of bits and bobs. And the reason for that is if you've got a system that's completely tight, so there's no slack at all between one wheel and the other, then any forces applied here to the steering mechanism has to move a weight just as big, which is the other tyre and wheel combination. So that reduces the amount of movement left and right you get. But you may well get the feeling of impreciseness and the feeling you're not quite in control of the car. And that's a horrible feeling. It's a sort of vagueness. And I felt that today when I went out in the car. It's a horrible feeling. And you think, well, everything's loose in the steering system, so I replace everything and it just feels just as bad. But you haven't got rid of the root cause, and the root cause is always tyres and wheels, because that's the only part on the car that's going to cause this left-right movement. Nothing else with, I mean, tie rods and arms and all the rest of it can't impart left and right force. Only tyres and wheels can. So if you get the tyres and wheels correct, then you won't get shimmy. Okay, so why does it affect a certain speed range? Well, it's the resonant frequency of the power steering. So at slow speeds, the tyre and wheel combination is not producing that much energy. But you get this sort of imprecise feeling, and the reason for that is both tyres and wheels are moving a small amount, which is being taken up by the torsion bar. And the movement isn't enough for the torsion bar twist to command the power steering to start putting forces into the steering rack. Get up to about 45 or 50, and then you've got a lot more energy going into the steering system. And this left-right thing can then twist the internals of the power steering mechanism far enough so the torsion bar engages and then starts putting power steering energy into the steering rack. So we can imagine at any time, if we've got force acting in this direction from this tyre imbalance, then the steering mechanism will turn within the power steering box, and it needs quite a lot of energy to do that because you're back winding a gearbox. You're holding onto the steering wheel, torsion bar twist, and then that commands the power steering, the hydraulic system, to put energy into the steering rack to counteract that movement. So the power steering puts this energy into that direction. But unfortunately, by the time it's done that, the wheel position has changed and the energy is starting going in the other direction. So the the wheel's putting energy to the left, and now the power steering has to put energy towards the right. And that's why you get so much energy through the steering wheel, because you're actually fighting against the power steering. At some point, 55 or 60, this movement left and right is just too quick for the power steering to compensate for, and then the shimmy dies down. So you get sort of, if you look at speed in this direction and the amount of energy going through the steering wheel, you get this sort of, you get up to about 45 and things start shaking, and then you get a big lump of it and then it dies away again. That is a resonant frequency. And that's the resonant frequency of the power steering. And this is something I checked a long time ago with my E32. I actually ran it without the power steering working, and the E32 had awful shimmy, and the shimmy just disappeared altogether. I mean, nigh impossible to drive the car without power steering, by the way, so don't try it. But it did prove to me that it was the power steering resonance which was the shake through the steering wheel rather than just the forces acting upon it. Okay, so to summarise all that we've said, static imbalance problems don't cause any problem with shimmy. Even if the tyre's out of balance, the forces act up and down, left and right in that direction and so on when looked at the side. But when you look at a tyre from the front or from above, then dynamic imbalance problems causes forces in these direction, and that is the only way you get a shimmy, is if you have dynamic imbalance problems with your tyres. fixing all your tie rods, your upper arms, lower arms and all the rest of it, pitman arm, idle arm and all the rest of it can reduce the shimmy or get rid of it altogether, but you will get a feeling of impreciseness as though you've got wear in your steering, and that's because the steering rack's actually moving but not far enough for the torsion bar to start commanding the power steering to put energy into the steering rack. Okie doke, so what's that got to do with me puffing up my tyres and everything today? Well, that's another thing. Obviously, the bigger and wider a tyre you get, the easier that can distort, because it's rubber, it's a compound which can distort, and if you've got to low pressure in it, say 30 psi, it's much too low for our big tyres, then you can start getting distortion of the tyre surface as it spins round, and that then causes dynamic imbalance problems. And if you put 40 psi or 41 is what are stuck in it, and I usually run my tyres at 42 psi, then these tyres are pre-stressed, you don't tend to get lumps in it, and then you don't get shimmy, which is why on my website I always say the first thing you want to check is your tyres, and the first thing you do with tyres is you puff them up to 42 psi. Now, this isn't the only problem with wheel tyre combinations which can cause shimmy, but this video is quite long enough for today, and in the next episode about shimmy I'll go through other factors which can cause it, which are always to do with wheel and tyres, like replica wheels, for instance, the hub size, the hub bore size, very important, and how I got rid of it on one of my E31s by using shims to stop it shaking. Offset is another one which can cause problems, especially when you start putting spacers on it. So you've got your normal hub here, and there's your axle point, and your bearings are around it. If you start putting your axle over there because you put a huge great spacer on it just to look great sticking out the side of your car, then unfortunately the offset's so much that a static imbalance will then start causing a left-right effect, and it's the only time that static imbalance can cause it. That's all for another episode though. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and don't forget, it's always tyres and wheels which cause shimmy.